the need for business in Ukraine and Canadian investors, and also to introduce our in-person and virtual speaker.
Clapping should always get people to come. Let's try one more time. Good afternoon, everyone, and this is my great pleasure to be here today. As mentioned before, my name is Mark Vytvytskyy. I'm a VP at the Canada-Ukraine Chamber of Commerce, and it's truly a great honor to moderate this time and it's an essential discussion on what a strong security guarantees means for the business of Ukraine and, more importantly, for the Canadian investors as well. As mentioned a couple of times throughout the morning sessions, we gather today at the pivotal moment. As Ukraine defends its borders with courage, it's also building the foundations for its economic recovery. And while the missiles may still fall, confidence is slowly returning. And with the confidence, capital comes next. With this said, investors does not really waiting for the hope alone. It follows a very clear and surety and clarity, security and structures, to which we will more discuss today, and trying to unveil some of the elements and some of the support structures that are currently in place. This panel today will dig into how the security frameworks, military, financial, legal, can unlock the private sector engagement, mitigate risk, and accelerate reconstruction. We'll examine what Canadian investors need, what Ukraine can offer, and why some of the companies are not just waiting on the sidelines, but are actively participating in economic activities. Let me introduce our guests. First and foremost, I would like to introduce Zenon Potichny, who is the President of the Canada-Ukraine Chamber of Commerce, and probably one of the longest-standing champions of the Canada-Ukraine commercial ties. He has seen it all, the full evolution of the bilateral trade and investment from post-independence cooperation to today's wartime rebuilding. Zenon, welcome to the stage. The second panelist we have joining us remotely from Washington is Roman Kachur, who serves as the alternate executive director at the World Bank Group, representing Ukraine and other nations in multilateral financing decisions. He's deeply involved in aligning public sector reforms with private sector mobilization. Roman, welcome to the board. Hope he's doing shortly. While Roman is getting online, I would like to introduce the third panelist today, Roman Shimonov, who is the CEO of Roshel, a Canadian high-security vehicle manufacturer and one of the most ambitious companies entering the Ukrainian market today. His team has recently announced plans to establish a production facility in Ukraine, and we will go into the discussions more about some of the future plans of the company. With this, Roman, welcome to the stage. I see Roman online. Just a quick video and audio check. Everything is working on your end. You can hear us?
I can hear you well. Can you hear me?
Fantastic. You can hear well as well. Thank you so much. Now that all the technicalities are behind us, let's dig into the conversation. And I would like to start first with Zenon Potichny. Just some of the housekeeping items. We're going to structure the discussion. There will be two main sections for the discussion with the panel, and then we're going to open up for about 20 to 30 minutes questions from you guys. So overall, I hope we will take about 60 to 70 minutes altogether. So with this, let's open up the first part, which is the investment landscape and security guarantees. And the questions to Zenon would be, Zenon, how would you describe the current investment landscape in Ukraine? And what sectors are showing some momentum despite the obvious challenges that we've seen? And with this, I'm going to join you at the panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark-Jan, and thank you again to NATO Association for inviting us. It's our pleasure to be here, and we also like to invite you right away to our Rebuild Ukraine conference, December 2nd this year, so please join us at that time. As to the question, Marjan, definitely as of mid-2025, the investment landscape is really marked by resilience and strategic opportunity. And we see that obviously Ukraine is actively pursuing the reconstruction and modernization of the country. It's not waiting for it until when the war is over, but obviously already these things are being organized, being planned, and this is one of the reasons we as the Ukraine Chamber of Commerce actually started our Rebuild Ukraine conference, because we realized that businesses, banks, and everybody else have to get ready, have to organize themselves, and sometimes it takes a long time. And we know Canadian businesses are very, very conservative, so it takes them a little bit longer than others, unfortunately. But this is why Ukraine right now is in the pursuit of reconstruction and modernization. And as you heard before from other speakers, the numbers that are being thrown around for this reconstruction and rebuilding are in the range of 500 billion. We even heard some numbers as high as 750 billion. So these are huge numbers, these are huge projects, and this is going to be one of the largest, maybe one of the largest reconstruction and rebuilding project in the world. So we all have to get ready, we have to be all prepared. When it comes to just in general, the Ukraine's readiness or Ukraine's financial situation right now, it actually continues to receive substantial amounts of aid, support, both military and economic. And so economically, the stability is there, at least for 2025. We'll see what will happen in 2026, but we all hope that something will happen and we'll be finished with the whole war. But just looking at foreign direct investment predictions for this year, we hear that it's going to be up by about 12%. Maybe it's a little bit high, but it would be nice if it was at about 12%. Now to just jump quickly into sectors that are demonstrating momentum in Ukraine. Obviously, agriculture is always a big one, and agriculture is very important for Ukraine, not just for Ukraine itself, but as you know, Ukraine is feeding parts of the world, also supporting them. So allowing other countries and companies to live and to also support their countries. One of the big things that happened in agriculture just recently, there was a Saudi agricultural and livestock investment company that invested huge amounts of money. That's a good sign. That's invested into MHP. You probably heard of that company, one of the major and well-known companies in Ukrainian agriculture. I would like to also mention that we have also a few Canadian companies taking part in agriculture business in Ukraine. They're smaller, but they're active and quite successful. And if you came to our Rebuild Ukraine conference, you've seen some of the success stories presented. Energy and renewables, also very, very big area in Ukraine. Unfortunately, with the invasion of Crimea in 2014, Ukraine has lost tremendous amount of possible natural gas. But hopefully this will come back one day. I'm not sure how quickly Crimea will come back to Ukraine, but I know that there are major companies that have been involved in Crimea, Black Sea, Azov Sea, who are suing Russia, and they're very successful in winning their cases. And you probably heard of Naftogaz. Naftogaz is a Ukrainian state company that won two arbitrage courts against Russia. One $5 billion, another 5.2, and there are another 10 or 15 companies that won. Obviously, winning is one thing, then collecting is a problem. But that's why the countries in general globally need to go after the assets, need to go after the funds that are frozen right now by Russia, and take charge of that, and then repay these companies, these organizations that have actually rightfully won arbitrage in the court. So energy is a big one, big area, and Ukraine is more interested in sort of energy security, at the same time also at the green transition, trying to kill two birds with one stone at the same time. Critical minerals and natural resources, as you have all heard, and it did not start very well with US on the negotiations for the critical minerals, but that's another big one for Ukraine. Ukraine has a lot of minerals that are required in electrical cars, in batteries, and other AI infrastructure. And lithium, graphite, titanium, they're very, very much in Ukraine. And hopefully this deal done with the United States will give a lot of life to the fund that they're setting it up and to the companies coming in. And I'm pretty sure that American companies are going to jump in very quickly because, as I said before, Canadian companies are very conservative, whereas American companies will jump in, and that will pull other companies to move in. So we see that as a big opportunity. Information technology and startups is also a big one all the time. Infrastructure and logistics. I mean, infrastructure, as I mentioned, going to be one of the biggest rebuilt areas of Ukraine. So obviously, building materials, industrial machinery, and others will be very much required and needed. And definitely, this is another interesting area for Canadian companies. And let's not forget defense and military tech. Ukraine, as was mentioned many times today, Ukraine's military is one of the biggest and strongest now in the world, not just in Europe. And Ukraine has rebuilt tremendously their technology and building their equipment, new military equipment. And as you see, for example, drones that have never really been used in the war before, maybe except some testing and playing with it. Ukraine now is one of the major manufacturers of drones, and as I know, even Unite with Ukraine, which is support through Ukrainian World Congress, used to buy all the drones outside of Ukraine before to support Ukraine. Now they actually see that the drones made in Ukraine, produced in Ukraine, are much more innovative, much more better, and the main factor is that they actually tested immediately on real live war. Americans and other companies now coming with their drones and their technology and asking Ukrainians to cooperate and help them and let them test some of the units in this war. So that is also a big sector.
Thank you, Zenon. I appreciate the highlighting the key sectors. I was wondering if you can maybe highlight some of the work that the Chamber does, specifically in encouraging Canadian businesses out of the sectors you mentioned, maybe the others, to look for the opportunities in Ukraine. And if though it happens, what are the main common concerns that you see across that are coming as the feedback from these businesses who are trying to do business in Ukraine?
Thank you for the question. There are a few things that we do every year annually. One of them is we're very proud of this event. That's the Rebuild Ukraine conference. We have done it 3 years in a row so far. As I mentioned in the beginning, we're planning another one, 4th December to 2025. It's very successful. It's very well attended, and we get businesses and government officials from Ukraine and from Canada to meet there, to discuss, to look at some of the projects already available to work with. And our main partners in this conference are Ukrainian Embassy in Canada, Canadian Embassy in Ukraine, EDC, Export Development Canada, and also Business Council of Canada. These are great partners supporting us through the last few years, and we're very appreciative of that. But what you get there is, you can see some of the investments, possible investment projects. You can get updates on the risk mitigation and what's happening internationally with risk mitigation. Also, companies have a chance to meet with each other, and also some of the companies already working in Ukraine have a chance to talk directly with Ukrainian governments and even outline some of the issues or problems that they have there. On the second part that we try to do every year, we'll see if we don't have elections for the next few years in Canada. Maybe we'll have another trade mission. We have done a trade mission with Minister Eng last year to Ukraine, which was in June of 24. We had also companies that participated in that chemical, BlackBerry, Aiken, General Dynamic Plant Systems. For some reason, Roman, you missed that. Super. Next year for sure. Anyway, this was a good trip to Ukraine, and it was what was also, besides the business and what we have achieved there, it was important that Minister Eng that participated has noticed how Ukrainians lived during the war. During the night, under attacks from Russian drones and rockets, we actually had to go down to the basement or the garage of the hotel, I think 5 or 6 times. So she at the end, she recognized and she says, wow, now I understand Ukrainians. How can these people go 3, 4, 5 times a night without sleeping, and their children without sleeping, and then they have to go next day to work, and children go to school. So it's sometimes good for these not just Canadian, but for other politicians. I'm glad that there's quite a few of them coming to Ukraine, because they can feel what is Ukraine going through, and hopefully that will help in supporting a little bit more. We also had meetings with Yulia Sviridenko, who is a deputy prime minister of Ukraine and minister of economy. Those were very good meetings. A lot of these companies that I have mentioned either work in Ukraine already or planning to work, so they have real questions, real issues that they wanted to hear from Deputy Prime Minister, and it was a very good discussion with the minister, as well as we had a roundtable that we organized with another partner of ours in Ukraine, CEO Club Ukraine. Another thing that we also do is and again, I think this year we're already committed to go with it. It's in November of 24, we were honored to co-organize the Canada Pavilion at the Rebuild Ukraine conference in Warsaw. This was in partnership with Natural Resources Canada, Embassy of Canada in Ukraine and in Poland. And we actually were able to, or they asked us to look for companies that want to be represented there, look for companies who wants to go there. So we're we're participating in basically recruiting them. Government of Canada also has paid some funds to support this. So this year we'll probably do that again. One of the very important things that we have launched a while back is the Rebuild Ukraine Toolkit for Canadian businesses, because the businesses that already work there and have things going, and they have support either in Ukraine or they know what's going on. But for new businesses looking into Ukraine, I mean, it's amazing how to start, how to get going, how to do things. So we prepared these toolkits for Canadian businesses, which helps them, first of all, understand the sector-specific opportunities, learn how to bid on international donor-funded projects, and there's a Prozoro system that helps companies bid on projects in Ukraine. We have noticed that actually a lot of companies from different countries are participating in these contracts, are bidding on these contracts, and this is this is not a few $1 million. This is billions and billions of dollars of contracts that would go through that system. But we noticed that Canadian companies were pretty well absent from that process. So that's why we worked with Canadian embassy in Ukraine and developed a system to help these Canadian companies. Also, there are certain things in the toolkit that help you to navigate legal, financial, and regulatory framework in Ukraine. And also gives you a chance to connect with Ukrainian stakeholders, and partner institutions. So again, this toolkit is to help for these companies to enter the country quicker and understand what they have to be ready for at the time. Our organization, the Ukrainian Chamber of Commerce, also obviously does a direct support for members, for companies. Yes, membership is not for free, and as I heard before, don't forget your membership in NATO Association. We always call for companies and organizations to join Canada Ukraine Chamber of Commerce because there's definitely big benefits for them to be there. It's not for free, but it's not very, very expensive. It's based on the level of your revenue, so it's very fair to all the companies. But we do organize webinars as well, networking sessions, focus on investment opportunities in Ukraine. And right now we're very actively working with companies that are trying to break into Ukraine, Canadian companies like Aken, like Black Iron, like Van Horn Energy, BlackBerry, and a few others. So if you ever want to know what we do for them, just please talk to them, and I'm pretty sure they will tell you that we're doing not a bad job.
Thank you.
Do you want to go into concerns or leave it?
I think that just to keep the conversation going, we'll get back to the concerns question separately, but to get the wheels in motion, and I would like to pass it over to Roman Kachur. We do have questions on some of the financial instruments, and before doing this, just a quick recap, I think, from what we've heard, and I think the message that sort of resonates with me the most is the business resiliency, that unfortunately the country and the business was forced to innovate, was forced to find different solutions. And as any crisis presents the opportunity, I think what we have really seen is that Ukrainian entrepreneurship, Ukrainian spirit of finding always the way to do and get things done is something that has sort of trickled effect in the business side of things. As you can imagine, 50% of the economy is fully supported by the third parties, by Canada, other partners and allies. But in the end of the day, it's the people and the business who makes the difference. The small and the medium enterprise are the ones who are the driving factors for the economy. So I just want you to think and that message to sink in, and that resiliency was forced on us, on Ukrainians, but the innovation that is coming out of this is something that probably will stay and will scale for the entire globe to use going forward. That's an example of the drone technology, example of pretty much any industry you touch, you will see an innovation that becomes the solutions for the global world. So we solve local, but we actually can address global issues. So with this, would like to, Roman, get back to you, to our virtual representative joining us from Washington, I believe. How does the World Bank assess the current business environment in Ukraine? And what are some of the key reforms that you have seen that might be attracting, and not just attracting, but also maintaining some of the foreign investments during the construction period and hopefully beyond? Roman, over to you.
Thank you, Mark, and greetings from Washington. As always, great pleasure to speak at the Canada-Ukraine Chamber of Commerce events, as well as NATO Association of Canada. So, to your question, Ukraine is since 2022 transitioned from the peace economy to a war economy, and it was a big transition for the whole country. And as of today, this war economy is well run, and thanks to the support from partners. Ukraine has received more than $120 billion US, and this allows basically to keep all essential services of the country run. Half of it went through the World Bank, and we have well funded to support Ukraine through the World Bank and through other partners, at least until mid-2026 in the baseline scenario. So Canada, by the way, is the second largest bilateral supporter for Ukraine. Ukraine is very grateful for that. So this massive support from Canada as well as other countries gives a confidence and macro stability to the country. And Mark, you made a statement about the confidence. I have actually the evidence for that. I just checked how the corporate bonds are trading. And they are trading at 90 cents per dollar, which means that investors are pretty much confident in Ukrainian companies that they will come to the war. So if you think about, if you thought about investing, probably many have missed the moment when they were trading at around 40 cents a dollar. We could not get a lot of upside on that.
Always good to have some data from you, Roman, so I appreciate that. That data always helps to back up some of the statements, so I appreciate that. Thank you. Go on.
Yeah, so now the major challenge for Ukraine will be to transition from the war economy to the peace economy. It presents a great opportunity, but a great risk as well. And security will be fundamental, as we hear in both surveys from businesses and from people in Ukraine. Most likely the security risks will remain, and Ukraine will provide security as a public good to the whole Europe. And it must negotiate the cost sharing to provide such public good. And such discussions are already ongoing. Second, Ukraine will need to develop its economy. And let me throw a few numbers. Right now, the EU GDP per capita is 41,000. It's based on the 2024 number. The current estimated population of Ukraine is about 33 million. So if you multiply the Ukraine GDP, it should be around 1.35 trillion to be at par with the Europeans. Current Ukraine GDP is 180 billion, which is 8.5 times less. So Ukraine's economy needs to grow 850% to catch up with EU GDP. Some countries obviously will take more time. If you look at what were the lowest income countries that joined the European Union, that they were Romania and Bulgaria, and you bring this number to 550 billion, and that's growth of 300% since now. So it's very massive growth Ukraine needs to move up on the income. So how Ukraine can close this income gap between wealthy or rich? And I think this tool is available to Ukraine. Since 1960, there were only 24 countries globally which managed to move from middle income to high income countries. That's according to the World Bank statistics. And unprecedented, 2/3 of these countries became developed thanks to EU membership. So for Ukraine, the way forward is EU membership, and EU accession to converge. It's like an ultimate convergence machine, both for institutions, markets, and access to financing. So to your question, what kind of reforms Ukraine will need, that's a whole set of reforms that brings Ukraine closer to the EU membership and brings the income convergence. War has unfortunately had a profound impact until now, and we will witness that. What we already see is that businesses are shifting from east to west, and the same people follow, they will move. And unfortunately, most likely this will stay. And we should be thinking about Ukraine, how we moving up in this, how we driving up the economy. Not just by scaling existing business, because there is no way we can become rich producing more wheat or corn. We need to shift from more complex industrial production and more highly value add and higher productivity. So in this sense, I think the word reconstruction to some extent has become not relevant or even obsolete. And my suggestion is to think more of Ukraine as Ukraine economy as the future, because we will need to build a totally new economy, not just reconstruction what has been destroyed. And that unfortunately becomes very relevant. So this work is ongoing. Prime Minister was here in Washington during the World Bank and IMF spring meetings, and we discussed it with the President of the World Bank, how the World Bank can support, and they are engaging in that to help Ukraine prepare the scenarios and modeling. This will require massive investment, both private and public, mostly private investment, but they will need to be backed by the public sector as risks will remain elevated. So private investors will need different set of tools, and I'll speak a little bit later about what kind of tools to be able to invest in Ukraine. But that's to a large extent similar to what is happening now at a much larger scale. So the next step, once we draft some of these scenarios, the Ukraine will present these scenarios to partners how to scale up the financial support, and Canada is part of this discussion. Last week, the Ukraine Minister of Finance, Mark Vytvytskyy, was in Bank, as well as President of the World Bank, and they met with Canada Finance Minister Champagne. So they discussed and welcomed Canada to join this discussion. So this work is ongoing, and you will hear about it more very soon. So that's over for this part. I'll be happy to talk about the financial instruments a little bit later.
Yes, thank you so much, Roman. I think what we've heard, and I think this is really interesting. It's that we're not doing the construction like for like. It's not about just going to the status quo that existed before the war. I think the realization is that it's going to be a pivot in terms of how the economy will move into a different direction. What type of the economic avenues should Ukraine explore right now, given the constraints that we have and given the opportunities of the future? Is it a service? Is it agriculture? Is it tourism? Is it all of it together? It remains to be seen, but I appreciate the understanding and sort of the push for thinking Ukraine is part of Europe. Our existence in the European Union started already as part of the agreement that has been signed. A lot of the work and reforms are underway, and I think, as somebody mentioned here before, de facto, we are part of NATO. We're doing the work with NATO. I don't think we're de facto part of the EU yet. Tons of work needs to be done, more importantly on the policy side, but also in terms of changing the mindset of how people think and how some of the best practices exist. So, with this being said, thank you, Roman, for highlighting some of that. The follow-up I have is around some of the risk mitigation tools, because as you can imagine, private investors will come when there is a security, when there isn't war insurance or any other financial instruments to support that. So would you mind briefly just walking us through some of the offers that the World Bank has or other financial partners in your ecosystem? Thank you.
Sure, Mark. I'm happy to do so. So let me outline a few instruments that are already available and operating, and how they will be scaled up. So the first instrument is concessional loan. As the risks are high in Ukraine, this is the cost of lending, availability of lending from the financial institutions is left limited. The World Bank is mobilizing resources from different partners. But let me mention a startup holding, and it's notable because it has the Canadian Fairfax company as the second largest investor and the shareholder in it. So IFC provided a 50 million loan to finance a startup protein processing facility. So this is a completely new soy concentrate manufacturing facility, and this soy concentrate will be sold to Norway, major salmon producer. I believe the salmon is consumed in the US and Canada as well. So in this way, Ukraine is integrating the global value chain and becoming and moves up in a higher value add. Another investment IFC recently did was G&G, better known in Ukraine as an Oko brand. It's a major renewable project, a wind farm in Volyn in western Ukraine, 147 megawatts. The total cost of this project is 261 million. And this loan was backed by United Kingdom Foreign Commonwealth Development Office through the first loss guarantee, European Commission through the Ukraine Investment Framework, and a concessional senior loan from the Trust Fund to the Clean Technology Fund. So these instruments break down the cost of financing and introduce some risk-sharing facility. Another project that we just approved here at the World Bank Board on Thursday, 2 days ago, was a Suple Agro. It's another agro producer in Ukraine. They benefited from having a risk-sharing facility from the eligible receivables, also direct IRC loan to support liquidity needs, and full first loss guarantee provided by the government of Netherlands. So these are just a few examples. IRC has a pipeline of more than 2 billion projects to finance with all financing and parallel financing. So that's on the lending side. Second, which I'm very glad to announce recently, IFC is starting to finance, to scale up its equity finance. Since assets are depressed in Ukraine, it's difficult to have to provide the collateral and to borrow because the valuations are quite low. That's why we have been pushing hard, and now we are moving with the opening the window of 100 million financing, which is supported, 100 million equity financing supported by the European Union. It's part of the bigger EU facility, second pillar to those who are familiar with. Another instrument, what IFC is piloting in Ukraine, basically setting up the whole legal framework. I believe it will be scaled up much more with the new economy or after the war is the public-private partnerships. IFC has supported government to sign up to 2 port deals back prior to the full-scale invasion. Now we are moving to the Chornomorsk port. IFC recently did some market sounding and event with investors in Poland, and there is an interest, at least from 2 investors, to move on with a PPP on the Chornomorsk port, regardless of the risks, security risks that currently exist on the market. And we will consider to scale up this to not only to the port, but to a broader infrastructure, both energy and logistics, as well as social infrastructure, hospitals, schools, to allow the private investors to participate in building this infrastructure and receiving availability payments from the government. On the risk side, we do have MIGA. Probably you may have heard about a few projects that MIGA provided the insurance. These were the assets, so basically MIGA provides the war coverage against the damage. If this investment is damaged by some military action, MIGA reimburses the full cost and all program profits for such investment. As well, MIGA did the financing instruments for foreign banks, which do have their subsidiaries in Ukraine, to unlock the lending by covering the risks for such lending. MIGA received additional contribution from the government of Japan just during the spring meetings in April, and they do have headroom to provide insurance for new clients in Ukraine. So these are the existing infrastructure on the World Bank side to support Ukrainian businesses and those foreign investors which are interested to invest in Ukraine. We are looking how to scale up this after the war is over to support the new economy, but so far it's quite big on one program that we have in Ukraine. Thank you. Back to you, Mark.
Thank you so much, Roman. Very insightful to hear about the existing projects, the pipeline, and more importantly about how they're going to be protected in the future. So really, really great to hear. Now, we're going to switch gears towards more private sector leadership, and we would really be interested in to hear more from Roman Shimonov, the CEO of the company Roshel, but some of his experiences as a pioneer, I guess, from the Canadian landscape around how and what did led Roshel to move forward. If you, Roman, don't mind, tell us a bit of your story behind the Roshel company. How did you end up in Ukraine? And more importantly, right now, the question today is, establishing the facility, establishing ongoing running business. What and how did you do it? Where did you get the courage? Please, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Hello, everyone. It's great to be here. So I think one of the reasons is closing the gaps. There are huge gaps today between the commitments and statements and words and actions. Words are not helping, and commitments and statements and all of these beautiful conferences, they're not helping on the ground. The battlefield where people are dying on a daily basis, words are not helping. And I think one thing that we've done differently from day one, we sent people to Ukraine. We were looking for funding to send the vehicles that we had back then. We had 8 vehicles in stock, and we were begging to send them urgently to Ukraine. Now, obviously, as a private company, there is a commercial reason behind it. Without the commercial reason, private company cannot be sustainable. Government companies, they get, unlimited funds, they can perform, they can do. As a private company, you have to be able to be reasonable, to be sustainable, to be efficient, agile, being head of the game. And before the war, we had amazing vehicles, but not for the combat operations. Vehicles were designed mostly for NASA, for Department of State, Homeland Security, police, and we understood that it will be a one-time order, or we need to continue the development, we need to learn. And typically, it takes 10, 20, 30 years to develop different systems that you're not 100% sure if it works or not. And in wartime, you actually learn. You see what is good, what is bad, and if you're able to implement, if you're able to learn, put it back into action, send it back and see that the result is right, you can continue to the next step. And that's exactly what we've done since day one.
I've heard if you want to fail, you have to fail fast. And that's probably one of the learnings that you had.
Yeah, please interrupt with good points. That's definitely a good point. And in our case, we don't have the privilege of failing, because when you fail, people will die. If you build a desk, with all due respect to desk manufacturers, so you will lose your cups, and I don't know what can happen. With the vehicle, people will die. Some people won't come back home to their families. They won't see the kids if we have failed. So obviously, when you design the vehicle, when you choose the materials, when you choose the nuts and bolts and welding and employees and the quality process, you have to take into account that at the end, there are people that will be transported from point A to point B. And if you fail, you won't get the second chance. And when you go asleep, you need to go sleep and you need to feel good about what you're doing. It's not about the financial side. Again, the financial side, mandatory, it's like a blood in your body to be able to pay the salaries. You have to pay for the best materials because better materials cost money. The testing, it's millions of dollars that we constantly invest into making sure that what we think is the right way. And only then you send it to the combat zone, and only then you verify and validate. So obviously it's a long process. And from day one, we had people on the ground that sent us report. They're still sending reports on a daily basis. We have our meetings, we analyze, we see what's wrong, what works better, and then we basically adjust it. And one of the things that I think made us different is the ability to be agile, not to assume that you're the best in what you're doing, because you will never be the best. You always have a room to improve, and that's an ongoing process. So with the people on the ground, we basically got it. We got the second order after 8 vehicles. We got 70 vehicles from the Czech Republic that stepped in as one of the first active players, and they basically wanted a commitment that we'll be able to build 70 vehicles in only 3 months. We committed and delivered all of them ahead of the schedule. Then we delivered another 200, then another 200. So up until now, we deployed more vehicles than any other company, 1,800 vehicles in the combat operation. And we're talking not about the numbers, we're talking about people that were saved as a result. Now, going back to the gaps between statements and commitments, there are amazing companies with billions of dollars, with amazing board of directors that discuss, and they get multi-million dollars. But at the end, if it takes years to deploy something, this is not helpful. People need it yesterday, not tomorrow, not today. They need it yesterday. Whoever can take the responsibility of delivering a good product that will be needed, that the end user will require for more, obviously will be able to continue to support with getting this learning curve to be done and converted into the actions by getting the recognition the way we got from The UK, we have a representative here from UK, from German government, from Czech Republic, from Canadian government, even though Canadian government is less supportive of local domestic companies, which is, I think, is a big challenge. Being a Canadian company, being a Canadian manufacturer, as we are paying taxes here. We employ hundreds of people, including 200 Ukrainian refugees that we hired. We are driving the economy, we're enhancing the defense capabilities, and by supporting Ukraine, we're supporting ourselves. Every single technology that we have developed, at the end, will be utilized and implemented back into the vehicles that we're selling to the local government. So by supporting Ukrainians, we're supporting ourselves. By supporting Ukrainian defense capabilities, we're supporting our defense capabilities in our north. We have shared border with Russians, and some people probably don't remember this. And this threat is much bigger than we think. Our problem is way more serious than we might think, because our opponents, China, Russia, Iran, they are already acting in a full wartime. Canadian and the West is not comprehending yet that it's time. Yesterday, we need to switch. Some people are saying it's a wake-up call. It's not a wake-up call. It's a snooze alarm. The alarm was already, now it's already a snooze alarm. And that's something that when we promote this idea, we're challenged by saying that we are doing it for the financial need. And this is nothing wrong in promoting defense companies that serving the interest of securing the interest of the citizen. Chinese and Russians, they promote their defense companies. There is nothing wrong to promote companies that enhance the defense capabilities, pay taxes, bring the technology, create jobs. That's all about the defense. Now, going back to Ukraine, in Ukraine, it wasn't just sending vehicles that we developed. It was about finding the next solution for the threats that changed. Today's war is different than any previous war. Drones became the major, as you mentioned, drone became the major threat. And with drones today, you have to be able not just to be able to build a vehicle, but to create the awareness, to be able to identify the threat, to be able to identify so many drones at the same time in so many areas. So we have just unveiled yesterday a new counter-UAS vehicle that is going to address this threat on the move. So those things never existed before. These needs are an ongoing challenge that will be applicable to Canada as well. Every single person can buy a $300 drone, can hack, can tweak certain things, and then it's an exposure that is much bigger than just something that is happening on the other continent. The issue is much bigger, and unfortunately the awareness is not there. And I think it's a responsibility of all people to create this awareness, to ensure that people will know that it's not just a one-time thing. Another one point that I would like to emphasize, following Roman's statements about the risk and financial support. The financial support is the key. The conferences with the NATO and Ramstein and all of the conferences, there is a lot of focus on things that provide tools for the long-term things. Long-term issues, they're very important, but we need to address the immediate ones before we address the long-term. And recovery and the rebuild of Ukraine will be much more relevant once we win. We as a West, as a free world, will win, and we need to put the efforts and focus on how to win the war prior to how to recover. That's, I think, something that we need all focusing on.
Thank you so much. I do have a quick follow-up. Based on your experience, any quick advice to the new CEOs that are interested in Ukraine and are considering, what would be, a quick elevator pitch for them to do the first steps initially from your personal experience?
I think it's all about risk mitigation. We so many times covered today the risk. The risk is much bigger by doing nothing rather than trying, rather than taking the chance, finding the way to mitigate the risk as much as possible, identify the opportunities, and finding those opportunities that can be converted to actions as soon as possible. building and preparing amazing business plans with financials and with amazing presentations and PowerPoints and ChatGPT generated text are not super helpful. What is helpful is identifying good technology, and there are plenty of amazing technologies, and the reason we hired so many Ukrainians is that Ukraine is known by a lot of skilled people that think creatively. And by thinking creatively, it's taking and not overcomplicating things. It's taking the simple thing, taking a simple drone, and Ukraine is #1 now in production of drones. It's 600,000 drones that have been produced just recently. It's a good reference to the country that was able, despite all of the challenges, to withstand against the largest country in geography, one of the largest countries if you compare the GDP to percentage spending of defense, and that's something that the West is way driving behind. The West doesn't understand what Ukraine is going through when it comes to the day-to-day exposures that will be our shared problem if we won't take the actions soon. The reason we opened the production facility, we already opened it, Mark, you said we're planning, we already opened 2 months ago. It's up and running. We're not disclosing the location for obvious reasons, so it will be definitely a very preferred target for the Russians. So already up and running. We got amazing people, and the ability to find people in Ukraine that have the experience, the knowledge, the expertise that can be implemented into the real solution is something that you cannot find anywhere. And those conflicts and wars around the world, they all have the same source, all coming from the same countries: Iran, North Korea, and China, obviously. And these threats are not going to be easier. It will be even more challenging. We see the new administration of the United States that priorities have been changed. If previously most of our funds to support Ukraine were coming from the United States, now it's all on hold. And we're happy that European players are stepping in. And obviously, for Europe, it will be extremely challenging to be able to get into the shoes that the US was there. And hopefully, this approach will be different and will be changed from the US standpoint. We also were forced to open a facility in the United States. That is also not helpful because obviously, with all of the tariffs and exposures, we had to open a manufacturing place in Michigan. And obviously, our preference always will be to build everything in Canada. This is where we can control the governance, we can control the compliance, we can control the transparency, the quality control. And every time when we are forced to do something else anywhere else, obviously it's not helpful because the price will go up. And that's something that we want to ensure to make it as lean, as agile as possible, with the ability to utilize the know-how, the technology, as I mentioned in Ukraine. So I hope I answered your question.
Oh yeah, it was very extensive. I think hopefully the new CEOs were taking the notes because there's been a lot to take on. But I think just to, in my sort of wrap up and understanding of the sections, we're going to the section number 3. I think what I've heard is, walk the talk, less talking but more action on the field, cut to the chase, like eliminate the noise. It's all about getting the things done and sort of practically testing them. And I think Ukraine offers this. And I think the third part is that it's looking at those ways how the business can be more sustainable, whether it's a government support or any other mechanisms such as grants or any other source of money, because those startup funding that initiate the work, they need to happen. And this is, I think, some of the gaps that we also have seen. If it's not the state that is coming in, you need to be able to find other vehicles that can help to just, again, initiate, accelerate that ideation, that production, and eventually the scale that comes with that. So thank you very much, Roman, for this. We will shift. Yeah, go ahead, please. So far what we have heard is the macro picture from the World Bank. We've heard from Zenon about the Canadian-Ukraine Chamber of Commerce, what we do on the both sides of the Atlantic, supporting Canadian and Ukrainian investments, because there is a bilateral way of working together. We have heard some of the very interesting and practical insights from Roman as well, what's happening on the ground. And by the way, congrats. I think my notes were still a bit of 2 months old. Congrats for the opening. That's a humongous step. Again, Now I would like to move ahead to the next section of the conversation today, which will talk about some opportunities around how to unlock the private investments at scale. We have all heard about the state investments. We have heard that there was one-offs, great examples from Roman, what opportunities exist. But if we would look, and I think the general theme before I'm going to go to the specific questions is more about taking a bit of a deeper level conversation and looking at some of the, if we would identify a single support mechanism, what would that be? Either it's a Canadian or Ukrainian one. What would make that largest difference if we want to really look at the private money at scale? Something that will allow investors, and I know Divis talked about a lot, we talked about other things, but any other ideas that come to mind? And I think, Roman, I'm going to go back to you and in your experience, if you don't mind sharing some of your personal stories or from Canada or Ukraine or other countries for that matter, about the public-private partnerships. The PPPs is the big vehicle. We do feel that the government coordination specifically with the PPPs is something that could be probably better done because the government is not that business sometimes savvy or has the mindset to enable the business. But what would, in your opinion, drive that momentum in defense? And how do you see the public-private partnerships being that one single tier support, at least initial, to get things going? And again, Roman from Washington, and Zenon, please feel free to add your perspectives, but I'll address it to Roman again.
I think when it comes to new initiatives, the easiest part is funding things. I think that's the easiest part because if there is an idea, if there's a good product, if there's a good solution, finding the resources to fund it would be the easiest part. And it's not necessarily getting the grants because grants would require a lot of formalities, administration, time, convincing presentation, and that's when you lose the time. Every company that wants to diversify, that wants to find new channels of revenue will look for, first of all, people. People is the most important thing, and people that can run and lead things and can lead things and not follow. That's, I think, the biggest value that myself and everyone else obviously will give a priority to. Second is the product, solution, technology that maybe it doesn't exist, maybe exists and we need to adjust it. But that's something that we would be always interested to explore, including investing, including trying things. And obviously, with the war in Ukraine, and we just had the discussion about the forestry and clearing of mines, that's something that is extremely relevant, is finding the technology that already exists, robots or any other applications, being able to identify the threat and eliminate. And by doing that, there are many technologies that already exist. You don't need to invent the wheel. You need the people that will be motivated, that will be waking up and doing things, and when they go sleep, they will think about it, and this is what always missing. People that are not lazy, that are willing to do something meaningful, finding the money with the right business plans is the least of the problems. That's the first stage. The second stage, obviously, when it is a product, the prototype, it would be to validate it. And Ukraine is great by allowing good companies with good products, sometimes not too good companies with bad products, to try things. And that's something that I think every entrepreneur should use. If the product is there, try it. Try, send it, deliver it, find a way to fund it. There are many opportunities, many ways of doing that. And this also, at the end, if it can lead to certain TRLs, certain levels of revenues can also follow to getting grants and getting the public money. As an entrepreneur, as a company, we never rely on government grants. We never ask for grants, because we think getting grants is, in many cases, counterproductive. We would always prefer to invest, to build a prototype, to test it, to identify the areas that can be improved, and monetizing by trying to build a case study and past performance. And based on past performance, selling it to other governments. When you have the right policy, procedures, governance in place, and the right product, it's only a technical part of getting the opportunity of waiting for the right tender, RFI or RFQ, that companies like ourselves can submit to, and then with competition you will get the award if you're the best one. And getting the past performance, I think, especially in the defense, that's the most important thing. And if the product is right, I'm sure that the Ukrainian end user will be more than happy to give the chance to good companies and explore and test solutions and receive results with the drone. That's exactly the result where many companies tried and only good ones survived and became video players.
That's a great example, especially, I mean, you probably refer to the Brave One Fund and the partnerships that where the state actually is investing and selecting and supporting the growth of the manufacturers, which is again a great example. So thank you for that. Roman, we will go to Zenon right now and ask him a question around the Canada-Ukraine Chamber of Commerce and specifically about some of the particular members of the chamber that, from your personal opinion, they stand out as the anchor investors in Ukraine, whether it was before the war, during the war as well, and if you can share some of the examples to illustrate that. That's a great also area where you want to, the concerns that you hear from those investors, we can cover that in this section. So then I'm over to you.
Thank you, Mark. Actually, from your previous comments, I hear them quite often because we work with Canadian companies and they always go to Canadian government for some support in order to move Canadian technology, which has been developed here. For some reason, it's very, very slow and very, very complicated. So I see that Canadian government, I hope Canadian government is listening somewhere. Maybe the new government will look at it differently because there's a beautiful, exceptional technology that we know NATO countries are using it, but somehow now trying to get it to Ukraine and Ukrainian military authorities. It's becoming a very, very difficult and complicated. And it is Canadian company manufacturing product here, paying taxes, employing people, but somehow we have to all work more on Canadian government to be a little bit more forward-looking and helping much more.
And pro-Canadian.
Yes, exactly. But let's just go back quickly to some of the companies that are great members of our company. Obviously, Roshel is our member, and Roman is also on the board of directors. Their company is, as you know, as you heard, involved. That's a beautiful actually success story now with opening and working right in Ukraine. But there are a few others that we would like to mention. One of our partners, Fairfax Financial, you have probably heard of them many times and a lot. They actually, through their Ukrainian subsidiary, ARX, insurance, they own and supply. One of few that supply the war risk insurance, and I mean I can just mention how important this is. One of the concerns of businesses that are doing business in Ukraine is how do I get war risk insurance? Because there are very few of those around. They're very expensive, and for small and medium companies, they're just impossible to have. And I can speak actually about our project, our hotel business center in Kiev, and maybe you've seen the story in Globe and Mail. Our hotel was hit, well, not directly hit, but the rockets were intercepted right above the roof. But the damage was tremendous. And I mean, thank God we had insurance with ARX, and we still have it with them. And at least it covers some of the expenses, because this is, again, we're talking about resilience, but resilience is as good as you can start and get going again, because you keep on being hit and you falling to the ground. You can only do it so many times. This kind of insurance, because it does not cover everything. Otherwise, if you take not the limited version, but the fully covered, even I don't think they exist, the fully covered insurances. I understand now they have another deal with American DFC, which now the levels are high. I'm not sure if they already started or not, but But what it does, it allows you at least to get going. And I'm happy to say that since December 20th, the hotel was closed for quite a while, but that helped us at least open 70 rooms out of 210. And I was just there last weekend, and I stayed at that hotel. So that's again resilience of Ukrainian businesses. But this kind of assurance is very, very important and very much appreciated. Another one of our members, NIST organization, some of you probably heard of them and know them, logistics and shipping company that always helps to connect Canada and Ukraine since 1989. There are other companies like Duraflex that are working in clean tech business. They're working in Ukraine right now or doing some projects. Company Black Iron that has been working there for many years. They have actually invested $80 million and has not really started the business yet. They're building, or the plan is to build iron ore plant, which could be at the end of the day worth about $1.5 billion of US dollars. One of our other companies, Shelton Canada, has been very active in Ukraine, and even though we lost, we're in the energy area, even though we lost in 2014 gas projects in Black Sea and Azov Sea because of the occupation of Crimea, we are still in oil production business in Chernihiv region. It's not easy. You get hit from time to time. We also had our storage facilities hit, so good thinking not to let anybody know where these things are. Unfortunately, all these oil facilities are old Soviet operations, and I mean Russia knows exactly where they are. They have the blueprints, and they know exactly where to hit. But this is the reality of life, and that's what we have to do as we move forward.
Thank you so much, Zenon, for highlighting some of those anchor investors. And again, this is just, as we see at the conferences that we have at other forums, we usually bring those as the success stories because they are the ones who take the biggest risk, but always takes the largest market cap. So, the risk comes with the reward. We always encourage the companies to consider new markets and to be brave enough. And again, we're here to support in any way possible. We do have 5 minutes before we're going to switch to the Q&A section and give you an opportunity to ask your questions. So Roman, last question in this section will come to you, Roman Kachur, around the whole thing. And it's more around, if you don't mind, like 45 minutes max, but it's all around how do you combine the efforts? Because we all know that one institution will not support. How do you look at the ways where you can unify multiple different support mechanisms into the ecosystem that is scalable for Ukraine? World Bank, your partners, other institutions. So even the vehicles such as grants, concession loans, other ways of the guarantees. If you can briefly mention in your experience some of those, that would be super helpful for the audience and I think for the panel as well. So over to you, and then guys, we're going to switch into the Q&A session for the audience. Roman, please, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Mark. First of all, I already mentioned like 120 billion that is already deployed to Ukraine. And that allowed to keep the country and all running with all essential services, with currency fairly stable and inflation. That's the ultimate result that basically shows political action. And there is no way any single country can do it. You may remember when the full-scale invasion just started, US was the first to step in at a massive scale. Now the EU, as Roman Shimonov rightfully mentioned, picked up is taking the lead. So that's a balancing act, not just between two largest countries that were the supporters of Ukraine, but also, I would say, dozens of many others that we provide. So what we did here at the World Bank, we did a mobilization platform. That's basically a full stack of financial instruments that allow both largest supporters like US to provide billions all the way to the smallest like Iceland, which is one of the smallest and provides like hundreds of thousands US dollars, but that still is welcome and well received. There is no way Ukraine could interact with so many counterparts without having this mobilization platform. And as I mentioned, we funded, we have resources here at the Bank Trust Fund accumulated, also in the EU and different facilities that allow to give and finance Ukraine in the baseline scenario until mid of next year. And same happens to the private sector. So facilities and trust funds that are here are available to European institutions like European Investment Bank, the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, and same IFC draws financing from the EU facility. So it's all cross-referenced and well coordinated. All donor support is coordinated through Ukraine Donor Platform, which was created back in 2023. That is the forum where all G7 EU partners convene to discuss. It's like an economic Rammstein for Ukraine. They convene on a regular basis with co-chairs from Ukraine, US, and the European Union to coordinate all support and make sure Ukraine has critical needs covered both in public and private sector. So I think overall we have created the ultimate war economic machine to support Ukraine and keep it running. We will keep it running as long as needed for Ukraine to win this war. Thank you. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Roman, for the overview of the mechanism. We're going to now switch gears towards the audience. We're going to have a coffee break right after this, so you'll all be released to have and stretch your legs. But I would like to encourage you and would like to hear from you as well. So please raise your hands, keep your question concise so we can go for as much as we can. We will have some support here with the mics, and I already see the first person at the back. Please say your name, who do you address the question for, and a concise question.
Alexander Menko, Ukrainian Canadian Congress, pretty much to all panelists, but especially to Roman. So basically what we know right now is the amazing defense technology ecosystem in Ukraine, AI for drones. Basically everything that is going there. How can Canada facilitate what we typically call co-innovate, co-produce, co-develop together and source from these joint enterprises, establish potentially venture capital fund, maybe within the help of the CUCC ecosystem to invest in Ukrainian defense tech startups. Many of us have been at CANSEC these couple of past days. Develop the collaborations between PRAY-1 and the Canadian analog, which is Ideas Innovation for Defense and Security, and that actually put on the table of politicians these messages, maybe at the G7 summit in Karnaskis, basically these three messages. Canada can source, learn, and co-develop, co-innovate with Ukraine in defense tech to protect, as you said, our Arctic, our borders, and basically which is the new tech tested on the front lines, much cheaper than sourcing from the US. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. And you just came back from Ottawa. You saw us presenting the product, and probably my answer will be shorter than your question. I think the government should talk less and do more. And that's it.
Good one. All of this and going forward, so thank you.
Yeah, but just one more note, and now it's not going to be short. Sorry. I'm really optimistic based on the statements that the Minister of Defense gave 2-3 days ago in Ottawa. It looks like hopefully this time it might be a bit different, and the government now is talking about the acquisition and purchasing agency. We know that Ukraine uses the Department of Procurement Agency that showed that it can be done pretty efficiently. Where you have a system in place where you can procure things, and in Canada, again, it's challenging. Some of the programs, they take a longer time, and by the time they do the procurement, it's already irrelevant, and people are keep changing in their positions, and then it's become as a nightmare. So hopefully it will be different. We're all optimistic, but looking back, there's a lot what can be done better.
Zenon, you want to add something?
Maybe just add to that, as you know, there was a meeting of ministers of finance of G7 in Alberta, and there was a private meeting between Champagne and Mark Vytvytskyy from Ukraine. And I wasn't there, but I heard from people that were there that the discussion was very, very positive, and Minister Champagne is ready to really, it sounded like ready to really help and move things forward faster. So again, I'm optimistic that perhaps things will change and will be better.
And just to echo and maybe close on this one before we go to the next question, is that I think that what we're seeing from the current government, just to sort of piggyback on what you mentioned, is that it's less talk now, like they're more giving, direction on things where the focus needs to be. So we have hope now.
Yet to be proven.
Yet to be proven, 100%. Next question, any more hands I've seen? Yeah, go ahead. Whoever's.
Hi, Roman Shimonov from the Ukrainian World Congress, formerly of IFC. Roman Kachur, I have a question to you about governance. Currently, the war is a great coalescer of interest and goodwill for Ukraine in terms of mobilizing and financing both at the national and in the private sector. I am sort of wondering what happens post-war when the goodwill starts to wane, when it starts to sunset. And to what extent does good governance in Ukraine start to play a much bigger role, both from the good governance from a public governance perspective, but also from a corporate governance perspective, in order to be able to generate much more delta in terms of financing coming into both private and public sector projects?
Thank you, Roman, for your question. Indeed, you are right. It's not only about financing, but it's also about building institutions. And that's why I refer to you as the ultimate convergence machine for Ukraine. Because to converge with the EU, to join the EU, Ukraine will need to transform its institution to a market base and to comply with Copenhagen criteria, Maastricht criteria in the economy. So it will upgrade the whole system, not just managerial systems, but also the setup of many markets. And obviously, huge financing will be required. There is no way this financing can be mobilized from the public sector. Ukraine cannot take more debt because it just won't be sustainable. Also, Ukraine cannot collect or mobilize more from taxes. I think you may not know, but Ukraine as of now collects 48% of GDP as a tax revenue, which is about the EU average. So by the amount of tax, if Ukraine simply increase the level of taxation, it kills the business environment. So this massive investment should come from abroad, and that's what all we hear from the foreign investors. They want property rights protection, they need better governance, strengthening the rule of law. So EU is a great example. We are not inventing anything new. There are multiple examples around Ukraine, like Baltic states, Poland, Bulgaria, Romania, these countries which went through this path. Obviously, support from some donors will go down. That's natural, but I think from others will step up. And that's what exactly we saw in the accession process for those countries which joined the EU in the past. So we expect the EU will be a major driving force for Ukraine financing and institutional change. Thank you. Back to you.
Thank you, Roman. Roman, we're going to get one question from this side, and then it's going to be. Go ahead.
Artem Sudarkin, CUCC. Question to all of you. So how do you think, after the end of the war, what sectors of Ukrainian economics would be the most interesting for the Canadian investors? And where we as young CEOs should invest our interest in, and what sectors of economics we personally should develop within the Ukrainian or and Canadian economy?
Thank you. Thank you for the question. Any takers who want to? Go ahead.
First of all, for young CEOs that are looking for opportunities and stuff, join Canada Ukraine Chamber of Commerce. You will meet a lot of companies, because that's networking with people that are already working there. You don't have to go through exercise of learning on new mistakes. You can avoid a lot of mistakes by just talking to experienced people and people that know how to avoid it. So do that, number one. And besides that, we, as I mentioned before, we get a lot of information and we are in continuous contact with Ukrainian companies that have projects ready to go. Some of them maybe even co-finance with somebody, so you can jump in faster and sooner. These are already almost approved projects, so it's easier to get ahead of the game. Also, again, on the insurance thing that we talked about, the war risk insurance. But you're talking about after the war, yes? Okay, then you don't have to worry. You don't have to worry about that. But really, the opportunities are amazing, and Canadian companies work all over the world, and they're one of the best when it comes to engineering, building, providing in any area, especially logistic infrastructure, oil and gas. I mean, they're top companies in the world. For them, the doors will be definitely open because they know already what to do, and they've done it all over the place. So again, you'll have a chance to meet and talk with them.
Anything on that, Roman, here?
I have 2 points for you. First, as a young CEO, don't wait for the end of the war. Make the war end sooner as a CEO. Second point is, the question is not in what you should focus. It doesn't matter what you will be focusing on. Whatever decision you will take, whatever thing you will take to focus on, if you will do it better than the others, you'll be successful. You don't need our advice in that. Good luck.
Thank you for that. Probably one last question. There was one more I've seen from the left side. Go ahead. There's one more.
Hi, thank you. My question is for all of you. So we've had a lot of discussion today about making agreements, trade agreements, etc. But we haven't had much discussion about how NATO member states, along with Ukraine, can essentially build up supply chain that integrate. Because we've heard much today about separate agreements, but we haven't much heard talk about how we can all unite to essentially bring economies of scale, more competition amongst essentially all NATO states, which is our biggest strength. So I just want to know your thoughts on that as current business leaders.
What is the specific question, if you don't mind? Just
I guess, what are your thoughts on essentially, rather than focusing on how private sectors and countries can make individual agreements, we come together as NATO to make more unified, more integrated supply chains?
Gotcha. I think the NATO hasn't even arrived in Ukraine yet. That's what there is a joke there, right? That Ukraine hasn't even showed up and see what's happening. But if there's any comments from the panel, please go ahead. I think the question is more on the unity versus, being solo private investors, solo countries, and sort of leveraging the mechanism, which I think Roman Kachur mentioned some of that. But if there's any final comments you want to say, please go ahead.
We need to be more united and we need better supply chain.
There you go. Probably the last question from the audience here, and then we will be moving to the closing remarks.
Peter Shano from NATO Association. Roman, I just came back from Ottawa. Congratulations, you have an outstanding line of products. And to your point, when you said that the government should talk less and do more, wouldn't you share 2 points that you'd like to change in the procurement process? Government procurement process.
We need more professionals and less clerks. That's number one. Second, we need to learn from our allies, and Ukraine is definitely our ally, and we need to learn from them, because it's just a matter of time until the same challenges that are going on there will be here, and I'm very pessimistic on our future. I truly believe it's just a matter of time until Russians will be much more aggressive, because we give them all of the reasons to be more aggressive, and history always repeats itself. And we learn from 30s how a lot of European countries and other countries basically incentivize Hitler to go and invade more and more countries. And it's happening already. Yesterday, Putin said that Now it's not only Ukraine. Now all post-Soviet countries shouldn't join NATO. And as we see, as much as we incentivize, that basically gives more and more reasons. So procurement process is a key to first identify, second to execute, third is to repeat it if it was successful. And that's unfortunately is not happening. And rather than preparing packages and hundreds of pages of technical specs and different clarifications and stages in the RFIs, it would be much easier to get products, try them, and do the analysis and adjust them as we do, rather than waiting for many more years to do this decision. So it's a very complicated process, and I think we don't have the same privilege as we had after the World War II, where it looked like we are over with big wars. We don't have this privilege and this whole track. We saw how everything has been shifted, and everything that is going on in our south is basically even incentivizing even more, focusing on better, faster, rapid acquisitions, and being able to put them and giving them to the end users.
Thank you. Thank you. And maybe the last 30 seconds for you to do, if you want. We have 2 minutes left in this section. Thank you, Roman. Zenon, the last 30 seconds from you.
I would actually use my 30 seconds just to add to that I 100% agree with you, Roman. Look at Ukraine, what they're doing, and learn from them. When it comes to procurement or anything else in Ukraine right now, things happen immediately. Things are done within a matter of days. For some reason, our bureaucrats in Canada live this easy, great life, and there seems to be no rush. There seems to be no urgency. And I think what we have to tell our government is, ladies and gentlemen, you have to change. You have to change, because at the end of the day, forget about the war in Ukraine and everything else, at the end of the day, the country cannot survive and exist if they go with the speed they're going right now, with the bureaucrats and everything else. We have discussions on Zoom call and others, and like this, I don't know, I don't see any of them trying to really get something done by the end of the week or maybe next week. Everything is okay, next month we will get back to you, and everything is left always unfinished. And that's not acceptable. That has to change. Thank you.
So yeah, I think the speed of the decision making in the business and everywhere else in the world, the governments need to adjust 100% also on that. Roman Kachur, last 30 seconds from you.
Mark, I think we all witnessed Ukraine show the incredible resilience. As I mentioned, we are well positioned to sustain this war and come to the end and win the war. And I believe that there is a great opportunity for all of us to work on the Ukrainian economy of the future and benefit, as we mentioned, of the technology exchange, not only for Ukraine to receive, but also to share the technologies that already evolved, and also to contribute to the global economy and supply chains and to the prosperity of all of us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Roman. Thank you so much, all the panelists. I really would like to thank you for the insights, for your commitment, for your leadership in how you're shaping the Ukraine and the future of the Ukraine. And I think the message is very clear from what we've heard from this panel, just to wrap it up, that the future of Ukraine will not be just shaped by the governments, as we're used to, but actually by the bold businesses who can act swiftly, with determination, and be able to put some risk towards that. So with all of this, thank you for the audience, for your questions. Thank you again for all of you, and hopefully we have the right people for the right job. So back to Bogdana, to you, to wrap up the session, and I welcome you to have some more networking during the coffee break. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you so much for that very insightful discussion. We would like to invite you for some coffee and tea for 15 minutes, and we will reconvene with our final panel on the importance of remining Ukraine for safe recovery and reconstruction. Thank you, everyone.